Salutations, crustaceans. I'm Lobster, and this is the ultimate Jazz Bass Preamp guide. In today's video, we're going to be installing the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp into our Sire V3. Let's get started. Welcome to the ultimate Jazz Bass Preamp guide, where we're looking at 5 different preamps from 4 different manufacturers that are all drop-in replacements for jazz basses, specifically the deluxe jazz basses that have the side jack. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp. This is the latest preamp, and this is part of the Sadowsky collaboration with Warwick. So these are actually being produced by Warwick in Germany. Retailing for around $200, this is definitely in the middle of the road in terms of the pricing of all of the preamps that we're looking at here. And this is definitely one of the, lighter featured preamps, only having a 2-band boost-only EQ, a passive tone control, and a master blend and master volume control. So not a lot of controls compared to the other preamps that we're looking at. But that being said, this is one of my favorite jazz bass preamps because it targets the jazz bass character so well and allows you to accentuate the jazz bass character versus indiscriminately giving you a bunch of EQ controls and letting you do whatever you want. Some people appreciate that control, though I do appreciate the simplicity of this preamp. So today we are going to be installing this preamp in our Sire V3. We'll be going over the installation process, the features of this preamp, and the different tones. Well, let's get started. You guys know what you need to do. Go ahead and pinch that like button so my hand will turn back to normal. Thanks. So first up, let's go ahead and install the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp in our Sire V3. To the workbench! Okay, we are at the workbench and we're going to go ahead and install the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp. First, let's see what we get in the box. Here it is. Not a lot going on here, but it is a very well-built and purpose-built preamp. And we're going to explore all the different tones once we install it. First, First, let's go ahead and remove the J Retro that we have in here currently. Take the preamp out. We're going to remove the battery and disconnect all the screw-on connectors. So this is a very easy preamp to install, the J Retro. It's pretty much solderless. We did not have to do any soldering for our particular installation, but your mileage may vary. There we go. We're going to unscrew our ground connector here. And we're going to remove our jack. And the preamp has been successfully removed. We're going to go ahead and separate our wires over here and get ready to install the Sadowsky preamp in our bass. Now, one thing to note about the preamp here is that the Sadowsky does not take the battery in the control cavity, meaning that we are going to utilize the existing connectors, or the battery connectors from the battery cavity on this bass. I believe this is the only preamp of the bunch that does not support the battery in the control cavity. So keep that in mind if you're looking to install this on a bass that does not have an existing battery route. We also have the little preamp module over here, and these connectors will plug into this guy. This little PCB is color-coded, meaning that you know exactly how to install these little plug connectors right here. So it should be a pretty straightforward install. But again, we are going to have to modify the battery connector here. And we're going to remove one of the batteries so we can run all the preamps in this video series at 9 volts. Keep in mind, the Sadowsky that I run in my personal Sire V7 is using 18 volts of power, so it is a little bit differently configured versus what we have here today. That being said, I don't think that's going to make much of an issue. I think the installation is going to be pretty straightforward. Now, another thing to keep in mind, this preamp does require some soldering in order to connect your pickups. So we have these 2 little notches right here. One is for each of the pickup leads. Then you connect all the grounds to your main ground over here. Now on the J Retro video, I did run a small piece of copper tape to the ground spot over here. That way we can ground the cavity cover, the control plate here. That is important because if you don't do that and you touch this, it will go buzz buzz, and we don't want noise. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and start with the installation though. First thing I'm going to do is actually open up the battery cavity and remove one of the batteries. Okay, so here we have our stock batteries. I'm actually going to go ahead and remove the connectors entirely. And we're going to go ahead and install a 9-volt harness. So here is our 9-volt harness here. I'm just going to go ahead and run these wires through the cavity. And let's flip the base back over. Okay, we see our battery connectors here, and then our pickup wires. Let's go ahead and just separate everything out. Okay, so first let's take the preamp, take our battery connector, and we are actually just going to go ahead and snip this right off, right here. We're going to get some shrink wrap as well. Pop that over these wires. And we're going to connect up our existing wires here. These are the battery connector wires from the preamp. Just going to go ahead and strip off the ends. And we're going to go ahead and solder these wires together. Okay, since I messed up with the shrink tubing, I should have used a bigger side. We're going to use some electrical tape. Okay, and there we have that. Now let's go ahead and install our PCB and connect our pickup connectors and our grounds. Next, we are going to connect our pickups, and that will require some soldering. So I have my iron handy. I believe the bridge pickup goes in the first notch. So what we're going to do is pre-tin our wires, apply some solder here, and then pop the wire in the little connector, and then make sure that the contacts are good. So let's do this. Pop this out. A little bit of solder. And contact is made. Our pickup wire is now firmly in there. Again, it only takes a little bit of solder. We don't need to drench the wire or the connector. All we need to do is ensure quality contact. Okay, the wires are installed. The last step, or I guess second to last step, would be to connect all of our grounds. Okay, now before we install the preamp, we are going to install the jack. So let's remove our jack plate here, and we're going to run the jack through our little hole that we set up. Okay, now let's go ahead and reinstall the jack plate. Okay, now let's install the preamp module. We're just going to go ahead and tuck this in somewhere. Okay, and then the last step, we're just going to go ahead and flip the base over one more time, install our 9-volt battery in here, and then reinstall our battery cavity cover. And we're done. Next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about the features and play this bass and check out the different tones that this preamp has to offer. Back to the wall. And we're back. We have successfully installed the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp. Installation was a breeze, but let's go over the feature set that we have here. For controls, things are a little bit more simple than the other preamps that we've tested thus far. We have a master volume, master blend, a tone control. This is called the vintage tone control. It's just a passive tone control. And this is a push-pull for a bypass to the 2-band boost-only EQ. And then that's it. We have a bass and treble control. That's it. Let's go ahead and plug this bass in and see what this preamp sounds like. So there we have our Sadowsky Onboard Preamp with the tone at 100%, the blend centered, and the preamp all the way down. So again, this is a boost-only 2-band preamp. We have a treble and bass control, and then our passive tone control, the VTC, or vintage tone control as they call it. So because this isn't as fully featured of a preamp as compared to something like the J Retro Deluxe, which is a 3-band with a mid-sweep and a passive tone control, this is going to be a little bit shorter. That being said, this isn't any less good of a preamp than the other ones we're looking at. In fact, this is one of my favorite jazz bass preamps because in my opinion, it accentuates the jazz bass character so nicely. So again, here is the preamp all the way down. So it's boost only, so that means it's at center. And then we have our tone at 100% and blend centered as well. Very nice. It sounds really good, and there's not really much of a gain bump when going from passive to active mode. What you've heard was the preamp engaged. Let's go ahead and bypass it now. There is a little bit of extra kick when you engage the preamp. But it's not unbearable and definitely isn't overwhelming. Now let's play with this EQ a little bit. Again, this EQ dials in the jazz bass character so nicely. If you want a little more bottom end, turn up the bass. Let's turn that to about 50%. Very nice. You know what? Let's turn that up all the way to see the extreme amount of bass that we can get from this preamp. Very nice. Let's go ahead and turn the bass back down and turn our treble up to about 50% boost now. Very nice. And here's the treble up all the way. Very nice. So that is a bit on the bright side, but as you can see, it is just accentuating the jazz bass characteristics of the tone so well. Let's turn the treble back down to about, let's call it 50% boost, and the bass at about 25% boost. Here's what that sounds like. Sorry for slapping. Didn't mean to get ahead of myself there, but as you can see, the preamp can get some gnarly slap tones without being, I guess, overwhelming with the output. Now let's go ahead and we'll keep the EQ as is, because I like this tone. I'm going to boost the treble a little bit more and turn down the bass a little. And let's play with the vintage tone control. What you've heard thus far is the tone at 100%. Let's turn that down to about 50. Right here. And here's the tone all the way down. Very nice, very nice. It gets very mellow without being too boomy. Let's turn the tone back up all the way and let's just slap this a little bit more. Yeah, this can really just get that tone, that jazz bass tone. This preamp does it, and that's pretty much the goal of this preamp. Again, this is about the jazz bass. This isn't about just giving you an EQ with a bunch of knobs and giving you the control to tweak every little thing. No, this is about getting the best jazz bass tone you can. And in my opinion, out of all the preamps we've tested thus far, again, we haven't tried the Audairs yet, but I like the Sadowsky for the traditional jazz bass sound. We're gonna go ahead and solo the neck pickup first. These are single coil pickups, so when soloing them, especially in a noisy environment, we are definitely gonna get a little bit of single coil hum. No big deal though. If you really wanted to replace these pickups, you can get a nice set of hum canceling pickups that would sound just great in here. My favorite again are the DiMarzio Area J's, which I have in my personal Sire V5 and V7. And here is the bridge pickup solo. Let's go ahead and center that back. So this is a jazz bass that has 60s pickup positioning. If you had one with a 70s pickup positioning where the bridge pickup is a little bit farther back, you will get a little bit more of that nasally sound, which you kind of hear in like Jocko's tone and stuff. The 60s is going to sound a little bit fuller and a little less nasally. But that being said, I think this preamp does accentuate this bass very nicely. Well, there we have it. This is the Sadowsky Onboard Drop-In Preamp for the jazz bass. Again, this preamp does not offer a version that has the jack on the control plate, so you will need a bass with a side jack in order to install the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp. So keep that in mind if you're looking to install this preamp in one of your basses. You will have to install a side jack in order to fit this particular preamp. That being said, some of the other preamps that we're looking at do have the option to get a jack on the plate versus getting it on the side, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility in regards to your application. That being said though, this is definitely one of my favorites, if not my absolute favorite, jazz bass preamp, especially for getting the more traditional jazz bass tones that you hear from the likes of Jocko and Marcus Miller and stuff. This preamp can really dial it in and really just brings out the fullest of the jazz bass character. which I can't really say about any of the other preamps that we've looked at thus far. Go ahead and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp in our Sire V3. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to like, subscribe, join our Discord, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about the Sadowsky Onboard Preamp inside our Sire V3. And as always, until we groove again,